DJ is stupid and he's also dumb. Even though he's blonde, he's not very fun. He has his own talk show. It's every gamer's dream. It's a crazy little talk show, and it's called Cookies and Cream.
Hey there, it's Cookies, and remember when Life is Strange felt like lightning in a bottle? Soft indie music, small-town Pacific Northwest vibes, teenagers whispering about time travel and destiny. For a brief moment in 2015, it felt like this franchise understood something other games at the time didn't. It understood vulnerability in its storytelling. So how did we get from cultural phenomenon to arguably franchise fatigue over the years? Today we're talking about the slow, complicated downfall of Life is Strange. And just like each of these titles, it's a slow burn. However, here the outcome is nothing short of disappointing, ultimately leading to our breakdown of Life is Strange Reunion and whether or not this franchise found its way. Let's dive in. When the original game launched from Don't Nod Entertainment, it wasn't expected to redefine narrative games, especially coming off the hot end of Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1. But it absolutely did. Max Caulfield's rewind mechanic wasn't a gameplay gimmick. It was thematic, regret, choice, consequence, all within the barriers of a time-traveling story we have seen done time and time again. But this one felt different. For more ways than one. And Chloe Price, love her or hate her, she is iconic and arguably the biggest aspect of the Life is Strange franchise. This game tapped into Tumblr era aesthetics, indie folk soundtracks, messy teenage relationships, moral gray areas. It was like an R-rated version of Degrassi with superpowers. It wasn't polished in the traditional AAA sense. The lip sync was quite bad. The dialogue was cringe as can be, but it was sincere and committed to the vision. And sincerity, it is quite powerful. By the time episode 5 ended, as this game released in an episodic structure, players were emotionally wrecked. The game took a ton of liberties with its mechanics in a gameplay sense. Choices wouldn't always be bilateral, and certain scenarios could end numerous ways. I still remember such cool puzzles like in episode 3 when you're breaking into the principal's office. If you blow the door handle off, the alarm goes off. Then you go inside, rewind before you blew the door off, and voila, you just manipulated space and time in a creative way. Or in episode 2 where a friend is going through a terrible situation where she goes to jump off a building. Your powers run weak here, and now your answers are finite, raising the stakes and illustrating what your powers could do. If you weren't paying close attention early on, this scene doesn't end well, and unfortunately Kate Marsh will lose her life, making you reevaluate consequences in real time. The ultimate reveal of where Rachel went missing ties into an insane climax and plot twist that was much smarter than I anticipated, all culminating in the weight of connections and relationships when you have to decide whether or not to let fate take the wheel. Life is Strange Season 1 wasn't just a game, it was an identity, carving a special mold in the Telltale style game format that did creative things with the episodic format, especially as you revisited the same areas time and time again throughout the season in each episode, adding more flavor and context to the world around you. Arcadia Bay was a symbolic representation of the trials that Chloe and Max went through, and their friendship is timeless here.
Because I don't want to ruin this the way I ruin everything else in my life.
What's going to happen now? No fucking idea. But one thing I'm sure of, it all began when I met her.
Then came Life is Strange Before the Storm, developed by Deck 9 instead of Don't Nod. This here is when the first fracture appeared for me. Before the Storm, now, it wasn't bad, and I want to preface, a lot of these games, I think the stories are quite good for the most part. But here's the thing, despite the name, it didn't feel dangerous, or as compelling as what came before. Like you were served the appetizer after the main entree. It leaned heavily on nostalgia, specifically Chloe and Rachel Amber's relationship, which is only hinted at in the first game. The stakes were much smaller, the time rewind mechanic was gone, and the emotional beats, while effective for some, it felt safer and not as unique as the base game. The character interactions felt diluted, there was less mystery to be had here. The franchise had its first identity crisis here especially. The prequel does a lot of showing why Rachel Amber mattered so much to the town, which is cool to see in context. Whereas in the base game, however, she is treated almost like a legend, since you had to piece together how people talked about her. Since she ultimately serves to symbolize the loss of innocence, it's one of those avenues where less is more. Without the visual context, we as fans can only dream of how much Rachel mattered to this small town. We can feel the context and weight from Chloe in Season 1, therefore our brain is left to fill in the gaps. That is much more impactful than simply seeing it play out in real time in a generic teenage drama-esque structure without the style of the powers and the rewind mechanic. There's nothing wrong with showing more, but it doesn't deepen the well as much as the dev team possibly were banking on here. Was Life is Strange about powers? Or was it vibes? Was it about mechanics? Or was it about transitioning relationships? The image in that screenshot of what the first did so well ultimately starts to blur here a bit.
And subscribe, follow me here, follow me there, follow me everywhere. Let's go game with a purpose. Like and subscribe, follow me here, follow me there, follow me everywhere. Let's go game with a purpose.
Next up, we have The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit. It's a short, free narrative experience that acts as a bridge into the sequel of Life is Strange. But it's also one of the purest expressions of what the Life is Strange series does best, and where it continues to drift. Now, for the core story, you play as Chris, a lonely kid dealing with grief and an alcoholic father. To cope, he invents a superhero persona, Captain Spirit. The entire game takes place over a snowy Saturday, where mundane tasks, cleaning, playing, exploring, blend seamlessly with Chris's imagination. A broken water heater becomes a supervillain threat. A snowman becomes a rival enemy. His cape, a towel. But to him, it's everything. There's a quiet, emotional gut punch underneath all this. Chris isn't just playing as Captain Spirit. Unfortunately, he's surviving. Now, why does it work so well? It's the grounded magic, and not in literal powers. Unlike Life is Strange, which had the time rewind, Captain Spirit pretends to give you telekinesis, but it's all imagination as you're playing as this young kid. And that ambiguity, it's powerful. It reinforces that the emotional truth matters more than the actual mechanics in the game. No, we aren't actually telekinetic, but what we're accomplishing in our hearts and mind is so powerful, and it carries that growth of Chris throughout the day. The environmental storytelling here is also quite good. The house tells the story. Bills piling up, beer cans hidden everywhere, subtle hints about Chris's mom and what happened to her. You're not told what's wrong. You feel it and you discover it. You embrace it with the powers of Captain Spirit. Everything is filtered through Chris's lens. The tone constantly swings between whimsical and heartbreaking without feeling forced, because we have to remember, one aspect of the story this game here handles so well is that Chris isn't old enough to contextualize what exactly is happening. So we have to kind of walk that line with him, which is quite powerful. Here's the uncomfortable truth, however. Captain Spirit is kind of a high point and a warning sign. The shift from intimate to episodic gimmicks, for example. The original Life is Strange, it thrived on small town intimacy and tight character focuses. But the time we get to Life is Strange 2, the series, it becomes more road trip structured, constantly changing the settings, less time to deeply know characters. Captain Spirit works best because it's contained. However, it doesn't last quite long, and it is just a serving piece for what's to come. And we have to notice here, the powers become less meaningful to the story. In Life is Strange 1, you had time travel, right, where the gameplay added to the moral consequences. In Captain Spirit, the powers themselves are simply a metaphor. However, we're going to see soon in Life is Strange 2, the powers become more of a plot device and less player-driven. The series starts losing that tight connection between mechanics and emotion, especially given the runtime and the pacing of its stories. Now, there is a lot of emotional subtlety with Captain Spirit. It does trust the player. It implies trauma instead of shouting it, and it lets silence, those moment-to-moments when you're just walking from one room to another, do the heavy lifting. However, this is where we start seeing some derailing, where the series starts over-explaining themes and relying a bit too heavy on the in-your-face, this is actually what's kind of transpiring. Now, originally, Life is Strange, it felt like small stories about real people, with a touch of the supernatural. That's what made the first game work so well, and arguably, Captain Spirit. So, where does that leave us with this game? It's a small title, and it has a huge heart. It proves that the Life is Strange formula, it works best when it's personal, quiet, emotionally restrained, mechanically tied to a character's perspective, and ironically, it also highlights how the series begins drifting away from those strengths, chasing scale, movement, and themes that are larger than the script can contain, at the cost of that intimate connection of those smaller moments, that the ones that really grab you, where you could just sit down, let some music play, and really get lost in the ideas of the world. Captain Spirit is a fine adventure, especially as a little transitional piece into Life is Strange 2. But this is unfortunately where the road starts getting a bit bumpy.
And what you did.
Daniel, no!
You and your brother are going to jail for the rest of your lives.
Leave us alone! What's happening?
What you and your brother have is the most important thing. He needs you, and you need him.
Daniel, come on! Daniel! Oh my god!
Then came Life is Strange 2. You might already be thinking that I don't like this one very much. However, Life is Strange 2, I thoroughly enjoy it, but not as a Life is Strange title. So Don't Nod returned with a new direction for the franchise, but they didn't give fans exactly what was expected. Max and Chloe are gone. Arcadia Bay is gone. Instead, we follow Sean and Daniel, two brothers on the run across America, after an unfortunate incident where the younger brother discovers he has an insane power. And I mean, this dude is basically Magneto. And here's where the franchise made its boldest and most divisive move yet. It abandons nostalgia entirely. Everything the first game tackled was turned on its head. You weren't playing as a Degrassi character with powers. You were now the older brother for a Degrassi character with powers. Someone who was looking up to you for answers in an unfair and brutal world. Answers you unfortunately just didn't have. Life is Strange tackles some deep themes: immigration, racism, police brutality, systematic injustice. It was unapologetically political. Directly so. For some players, it was a mature and necessary style of storytelling, with some incredible moments like the first time the boys are held hostage for allegedly stealing, which you can make a decision to steal or not, or when they run into a friendly journalist by the name of Brody. someone who aids in their journey and conveys that not all strangers are gonna harm you. Some are as friendly as can be. The finale this time around also had an insane conclusion with 4 distinct endings that could occur based on the morality of each individual boy, where the younger one and the older one sat, alongside whether you choose to cross over into Mexico at the end of the game. Yes, it was good. The pacing was there. There are some quite engaging sections and a lot of moments that are quite heartfelt, like one choice in particular where Daniel gets to choose whether or not to lose his virginity. And of course, if you've ever played a video game like Mass Effect, this is kind of what happens. However, in Life is Strange 2, this is what happens. See, the game keeps these moments real. However, it didn't scratch the same itch the first title did, and I believe it's due inherently to its structure. And no fault to Don't Nod, the road trip format prevented the deep, recurring side character bonds that made Arcadia Bay memorable from occurring. You couldn't get connected. See, Arcadia Bay was a reflection of our main cast, but in the sequel, you have a strong bond amongst brothers that don't have much of a connection to the rest of the world you kind of exist in. While part of that is for the story, it makes the cast on the side not as memorable nearly across the board. From memory, I can barely name you 5 characters from this game, yet I could name you almost every single person in the first game, and Captain Spirit. Each episode introduced new faces, and ultimately leaves them behind. Sales here were softer, engagement from the fans dipped, and this is where we see the fandom of the franchise begin to split in the middle over what Life is Strange ultimately should be about. Because with all due respect, Life is Strange 2 is a great character study trapped in a less engaging narrative structure.
I'm not giving up. Not ever.
So where did the story go from here? Well, we find ourselves at Life is Strange True Colors. Deck 9 took over fully here with development and production. This time, they play it much safer. New town of Haven, new protagonist in Alexandra Chen. Instead of time travel powers, she has the power of empathy and deductive reasoning, which sounds dumb, but arguably made the dialogue interactions a tale of two sides. On one side, it allowed you to play off dialogue in different ways. You could see what someone was feeling and engage them to kind of manipulate them to a sense. But in other situations, it took away the shock of what someone was actually feeling. See, in Life is Strange 1, you had to think a bit more about how someone actually felt in a conversation, and throughout the season and various episodes, you saw character motivations change as more information came to the forefront. Since many characters had late season revelations that you could also predict, but you had to think about it. Here, in True Colors, it's a matter of seeing their aura color and bam, mission accomplished. You're essentially playing what's that one game where it's like you're matching the colors? It's not Trivia Pursuit. It's not Red Light, Green Light. I'm throwing it on the screen here because I can't remember the name of it. Simon Says. No, it's not Simon Says. Whatever this game is, it's basically that with emotions. It kind of dumbs it down a little too much here. On paper, this game sounded like the kindling, however, to reignite the franchise. And to be fair, True Colors is polished. It runs incredibly well. Graphically looks amazing, with its art style and direction being the strongest in the series. It also has some returning characters, alongside the best mocap in the franchise yet. The facial animations are significantly better. The town of Haven Springs is charming and memorable. The romance options are also well written and flowed naturally within the plot. But here's the problem. It all felt manufactured, just like the empathy mechanic. Like it was reverse engineered to recreate the Life is Strange vibe. Quirky small town? Check. Indie soundtrack? Check. Emotionally damaged protagonist? Check. But it lacked the raw unpredictability of the original. Within the first 5 minutes, I actually called exactly how the game was going to end in almost every single twist. Was it well acted? Yes, incredibly so. Were there moments that were emotional? Yes, I would argue some of the most gut-punching moments in the franchise. But did it have some great pacing? Also, yes, the story flowed quite well. And did the LARPing section, as someone who did it in college, play as close to what real LARPing is like? Oh, you bet your sweet ass. It didn't spark discourse the same way, however. It didn't divide players. It didn't shock anyone beyond the late game revelations that only served to recontextualize a brief entry hour and missable environmental details. I love the story setup of Alex reuniting with her brother after they were separated through our foster care system in America. However, the overarching plot felt like a retread of the first game, where the surprise villain, who isn't much of a surprise to be honest, does his thing because the game needs skeletons in this small town's closet, because its Life is Strange. Although I do love the way this game ends, I will say that. You get to set a chart for Alex, and whether or not her empathy would be able to help ease the pain of the town and those around her. It was pleasant. It's well executed, and ultimately shows for a cult following, sometimes good isn't good enough for sales.
Like and subscribe, follow me here, follow me there, follow me everywhere. Let's go game with a purpose. Like and subscribe, follow me here, follow me there, follow me everywhere. Let's go game with a purpose.
Now, Wavelengths is a prequel DLC to Life is Strange True Colors that released after the base game, where you play as Steph Gingrich, running a radio station in Haven Springs. It's essentially a prequel to True Colors. See, you spend the entire DLC inside a record store/radio booth, progressing through the season while hosting a radio talk show, taking calls from locals, curating music playlists, and reflecting on Steph's past, including events from Life is Strange before the storm, curing some loose ends left from that prequel entry back from the first game. There's no big mystery here, no supernatural power, just vibes, grief, and personal growth. Now, what does it do well? There are strong character moments, and the writing is quite good. Steph is effortlessly likable. Her awkwardness, humor, and quiet sadness carry this entire experience in a way we haven't seen done before. Much like Captain Spirit, it thrives in a single location. You get comfortable. You notice changes over time. The world feels lived in and reactionary to you. The music, seasonal shifts, and late-night radio tone create a genuinely relaxing, almost therapeutic experience. Now, there's a problem here. Here's where things get tricky, because Wavelengths, it may be good, but it is quite a bit of a red flag. Now, earlier entries balanced gameplay mechanics, time rewind, choices with weight, narrative consequences. Wavelengths completely strips it almost all the way. No meaningful branching choices, no gameplay systems with stakes, mostly dialogue that doesn't really have an effect, plus some light interaction. A lot of this is because Steph's character in True Colors is set, so you can only adjust and change so much. It's less of a game and more of an interactive podcast, if that makes sense. In Life is Strange, powers define the experience. In True Colors, empathy powers already felt a bit lighter and a step back. In Wavelengths, no powers at all, but on top of that, there's no mechanical hook to tie players to the story. Numerous games have done this radio set piece 10 times better. Look at Killer Frequency, for example. So what we're left here with is just a narrative without the interactivity that made the series special. And not just that, it's a narrative that doesn't really matter in the base game. It does add a little emphasis to Steph's character, but outside of one conversation with a pivotal character in True Colors that happens at the last 10 minutes, most of this DLC doesn't really matter. Conflicts, they feel weightless. I mean, compare the stakes. Life is Strange 1, you had life, death with time manipulation. Life is Strange 2, you had brotherhood, survival, morality. In Wavelengths, you have organizing records and taking phone calls. Even Steph's deeper struggles of grief and identity in Before the Storm that never got rectified, it feels low pressure here because the player can't make meaningful or influential outcomes, and the player can't make meaningful decisions, and there's no tension driving said decisions. The series always had limited branching, but earlier games hit it well or played off your choices in creative ways with twists in the story. Here, it's obvious. Dialogue choices barely matter, outcomes don't really change anything, and you're simply along for the ride. It pulls back the curtain on a core issue with the franchise. The series relies on feeling like choices matter, not actually delivering on it in certain respects. Here, the door is blown wide open. At this point, Life is Strange, it starts to feel unsure about itself. It's going through this identity crisis. Is it a narrative-focused game? Is it a cozy life simulator? A supernatural drama? Wavelength leans hard into the lo-fi emotional hangout simulator, which isn't bad, but it's a massive departure from what built the series in the first place. Now, Wavelengths, it's heartfelt, it's charming, it's incredibly well acted, and a nice way to kill 3 or 4 hours on a fall or autumn-based afternoon. But it also highlights a massive turning point in the series. The gameplay was getting stripped down, there was less consequence in decisions, and the identity started to mute itself. It shows the series drifting from interactive storytelling with meaningful mechanics to a passive style of storytelling with light interaction, almost like the transition of the Telltale's The Walking Dead from Season 1 to Season 2. And once that shift happens, it's really hard to go back. Behind the scenes, something else changed. The franchise, it became a brand. Merchandising, remasters, ultimate editions. The remastered collection of the original games launched with technical issues, undercutting goodwill. Meanwhile, Don't Nod moved on to new projects. Deck 9 became the steward for the series, and slowly Life is Strange shifted from an experimental narrative risk to a managed intellectual property. It stopped feeling like lightning and started feeling like maintenance. The downfall of Life is Strange, it isn't about one bad game. It's about dilution. The original succeeded because it was unexpected. Each sequel after either played it too safe or deviated way too far, not balancing the scales. The franchise never found a stable identity after Arcadia Bay. Was it anthology-based storytelling? Recurring characters? Was it political commentary? Was it cozy small-town drama? Was it Degrassi vibes? Every entry pulled in a slightly different direction, emphasizing different elements of the recipe in each new entry. And audiences continued to drift, with the fanbase unable to unify over exactly what made the series work. Which unfortunately, that answer died the moment Max and Chloe's tale ended. Which brings us to Double Exposure.
But 2 nights ago, I found my friend's body in the woods. I don't know who I can trust, or who trusts me. But my friend Safi is dead.
When Life is Strange Double Exposure was announced, it should have been a slam dunk. Max Caulfield, time powers, a murder mystery, on paper, nostalgia bait done right. But somewhere between the reveal trailer and release, something snapped. Bringing Max back may have done more harm than good to the franchise. at this stage, especially since during this time Marvel was arguably at its peak, shifting the philosophy of the franchise. It was focusing on different characters with unexplained supernatural powers. But what if we adjusted the format to be an Avengers origin story now for Max? The return of Max Caulfield here, it was the biggest selling point for this game. And that's also the biggest problem. The original Life is Strange worked because it was lightning in a bottle. Small town atmosphere, intimate stakes, raw, messy teen drama, and most importantly, consequences. But not only that, the town was open and willing to let the player make choices and really dive into how they can impact those within the town and the mirror that's reflecting this image of our main protagonist back onto us. That is why Life is Strange Season 1 worked so well. Max's rewind power wasn't just a mechanic, it was a moral burden. But in Double Exposure, her new power, jumping between two realities, feels less personal and more like a glorified puzzle box. Instead of, should I sacrifice Arcadia Bay for the well-being of my friend, we get, which timeline do I stand in to grab this clue that leads me to a demigod antagonist? The emotional weight doesn't hold up as it did in other titles, instead overcomplicating an already quite messy storyline here. Let's talk mechanics. In the original game, rewinding time made every choice feel loaded. You could undo things, but not everything. The storm was coming. The consequences were inevitable. You didn't know what choices were leading you down that path. Like with all childhoods, as they transition into the realm of adulthood. In Double Exposure, Max hops between a living friend timeline and a dead friend timeline. Cool concept. But here's the issue. It rarely feels dangerous like it should. You're not bending time in desperation. You're flipping between dimensions like you're changing Netflix profiles. The tension never fully builds because the stakes feel compartmentalized. If something goes wrong in one timeline, you just go to the other one. It becomes a structural gimmick instead of an emotional mechanic. And the Easter eggs don't justify the format change. And let's address it. Chloe. The Chloe-sized elephant in the room. Depending on your ending in the first game, Chloe is either dead or alive, and Arcadia Bay is gone. Double Exposure has to account for both choices, and that narrative gymnastics act, you can feel it. To avoid invalidating player choice, the story keeps Chloe at arm's length. The result is a version of Max that feels emotionally isolated, almost sterilized, as she doesn't speak like someone who went through the events of the first game. It all feels mechanical and does not match up at all. The messy, deeply human dynamic that defined the first game is missing outright, for the sake of making sure any choice was justified. The first game had two main endings, and the mental gymnastics again this title forces itself to do is crazy. And without that anchor of historical baggage, Max feels like she's wandering through a mystery instead of surviving one, like a paper bag flowing through the air. Another issue? This doesn't quite feel like a Life is Strange game. The original game, again, leaned into indie vibes, awkward conversations, uncomfortable intimacy. You know, natural human emotions and experiences. Double Exposure feels more corporate by design, like actors trying to play these parts without fully being invested in breaking that fourth wall. The dialogue is safer. The characters are curated way more than ever before. The edginess is toned down. It's like the game is afraid to do what it did before, despite trying so hard to make you remember what it did before. Without that rawness, it starts to feel like a prestige streaming drama version of itself, a straight to Netflix adaptation that misses the mark. The mystery doesn't hit. A good Life is Strange mystery works because it's intertwined with character growth throughout the season. In the first game, uncovering Rachel Amber's disappearance wasn't just a plot, it reshaped how you saw everyone, from the faculty at the school to the students as well as the family members involved in the town. In Double Exposure, the murder mystery often feels secondary to the mechanic. In Life is Strange 2, your connection with your brother did evolve off of your choices. In Double Exposure, the structure of consequence doesn't feel as interconnected with those around you. True Colors, it nailed the emotional connection to the world and choices made. And Double Exposure is a superficial take on a story long past its final chapter. Like the Fast series that at this point exists solely for employment and contractual obligations. You're solving this game's mystery because the game says so, not because it emotionally resonates within your sense of curiosity. And when the final reveals land, they don't devastate, they just conclude, not even conclude, it sequel baits to the second part of this game and leaves on such a convoluted note. That's a huge difference. Now, the core problem with the series is clear. This game exists in tension between nostalgia and reinvention. Bringing Max back was bold, but bold only works if you're saying something new about her. Instead, it feels like the game is trying to preserve her by keeping her growth stagnant and opaque to the images from her past. And preservation kills growth. Max in 2015 was messy, insecure, terrified of this power she couldn't explain. Max in Double Exposure feels almost like a legacy character being protected by the script instead of challenged, especially with the emphasis of a grander problem behind the scenes that will require Avenger-style action to save the day, far outweighing those smaller, more intimate moments the series was founded on. See, Life is Strange Double Exposure, the biggest issue here is the game's not a disaster. None of these games realistically are. They look good, the performances are strong, and the dual reality idea here, it's clever, but it lacks emotional volatility that made the original and even 2 and 3 special. The first game felt like a diary you weren't supposed to read. Double Exposure feels like a sequel you're expected to buy. And that difference, you feel it. If you love Double Exposure, I get it, but for me, this wasn't a storm. It was an echo, one that has brought us to what may be the finale for the franchise in the video game ecosystem, excluding the rumored TV show. So let's look at the conversation today. When people mention Life is Strange, they almost always mean the first game. Even when I'm referencing it for this video, a lot of times I'm solely focused on the first game. Max and Chloe still remain the face of the franchise. Not Sean and Daniel, not Alex Chen. Both are incredibly well written though. That says something. The newer games aren't disasters. They're just not cataclysmic events, and that's the biggest shift. The franchise went from a cultural moment to a timid release cycle.
It's dangerous. If you keep going back there, it could all unravel.
It's okay.
We've got to focus on the fire. So, what does future Max think caused it?
I wonder if it was about Abraxas.
Secret society. Shady calls with the Abraxas president. It could be something.
And there was a protest the same day as the fire.
People are blaming Caledon for all of their problems, especially now that your new president wants to snatch up more of Lakeport.
Not to mention a shapeshifter with whom I share ideological differences.
Dude, what is your life?
Now that brings us to Life is Strange Reunion, which is a direct follow-up to Life is Strange Double Exposure, bringing back Max Caulfield and Chloe Price for a story centered on memory, consequence, and whether the past should ever be fixed. Now, what is the story actually about? The game begins by respecting your original ending here. If you had the choosing my bae Chloe ending, Max and Chloe are alive together, drifting from place to place, emotionally stuck in what happened to Arcadia Bay. If you choose the Arcadia Bay ending, Chloe is dead, and Max has tried to live a normal life, but is clearly still suffering from all the trauma. From there, both routes converge quickly when a new phenomenon appears. People begin remembering events that never happened, or forgetting ones that did. Now, what's the central conflict here? Max, she's discovered her powers have evolved. She can no longer just rewind time, she can now enter and alter memories. But every use causes instability, you see. Locations subtly change, conversations contradict themselves, people shift personality mid-scene. This leads to the core mystery. Something is breaking reality as we know it. There's another disaster coming, because of course there is. Its life is strange. Not just time, but how are these events being remembered? What is really triggering all of this? That leads us to the investigation thread. Max traces the phenomenon back to a small research group studying trauma and memory, individuals connected to Arcadia Bay survivors. Echoes of her original decision rippling outward. Unlike double exposure, you're seeing connections to the grander story here in a more coherent way. This kind of works. Depending on your route, Chloe is either physically present and helping you, or she exists in fragmented memory sequences Max keeps revisiting. Either way, Chloe is central to the plot, not just emotionally, but structurally to the story, in a way that now makes sense and respects the original game. Their relationship isn't just fan service, it's the anchor of the plot in a way that makes sense. In either ending, say choosing Chloe, they struggle with the guilt and codependency on one another. If you chose Arcadia Bay, Max struggles with letting go versus holding on to Chloe's memory. You have this key recurring theme here. If you could change how you remember someone, would you? The game understands what fans care about, the connection, and how the plot evolves it. Some quiet scenes, like sitting by the lighthouse, or just taking in a car, or just talking in a car. Easily the strongest parts of this game. It explores long-term consequences, right? Survivor's guilt, codependency, the was it worth it mantra. And for a while, Reunion feels like a mature evolution of Life is Strange 1. The highs in this game surpass Life is Strange 1. Unfortunately, the lows kind of dip much deeper. Despite two very different starting points, the game, it does quickly funnel you into the shared narrative path dilemma that a lot of Telltale games ran into. Major differences will fade away after a few hours, and key emotional beats from Life is Strange Season 1 are reused. Thematically, a lot of what this game brings to the forefront for its dramatic conclusion, realistically, is just talking about the same themes that Episode 5 of Life is Strange Season 1 already dove into. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but you are retreading the same ground, just with a modern approach to graphical fidelity and set dressing. Max's powers do also return again, but they are a bit messier. New abilities involving memory manipulation is fun, but the rules aren't really clear. And before, where the systems don't always work as intended, now that issue is expanded upon tenfold. Fewer meaningful gameplay applications come from this power versus the tried and true time manipulation aspect of the first game. Instead of enhancing our choices, it feels more like a narrative excuse to revisit what Life is Strange 1 did so well. We also have to call it out for what it is. There's minimal puzzles, limited exploration, dialogue choices with little consequence outside of a finale that does stick the landing. And for what it's worth, it brings the saga of Max and Chloe to a powerful conclusion, where you get to make what is arguably the most powerful choice I have seen in a game like this, since deciding whether to kill or let Lee live in Telltale's The Walking Dead. This game has an incredible conclusion. The setup fixes the issues of double exposure, but the ground in between, it feels more like filler than anything else. You're there for Max and Chloe's relationship. Everything else kind of falls to the side. The game knows you love Max and Chloe. It leans on this heavily. You're going to notice recreated iconic shots, musical cues mirroring the base game, dialogue callbacks that feel a little too deliberate as well. Instead of organic emotion, some scenes feel like, remember this? Do you feel something now? How about now? Once again, the story, it builds towards a reality-breaking consequence, right? You have your moral dilemma, a binary-style resolution. It echoes Episode 5 of the original, except stretched out for an entire 7-hour adventure, which raises a bigger issue here. The series as a whole, it hasn't been evolving. It's remixing and reshuffling itself for a payoff that does feel earned. And it does stick the landing. I left the credits rolling and I felt like this entire journey since 2015 was fully realized, and the Life is Strange, at least narrative promise that Max brought, it felt like it came to a natural resolution. But there just isn't enough memorable moments, characters, encounters, or a grander story in any of this game. A lot of it really does fall to the side. The game knows this. It's just unfortunate that, it kind of misses the mark. And I would argue even games like Life is Strange 2 handled those middle ground episodes a bit better. Some of the strongest scenes are so quiet, like talking in a car about what truly happened with her powers, disagreeing on whether Max should use her powers again, Chloe calling out Max's need to control outcomes, this dependency on being able to make changes that may be far beyond your scope and leading into the realm of playing God. There's a lot of powerful scenes in this game I truly was not expecting. And that's that uncertainty from the original that really bled back into the script in a way we have been waiting for a long time now, like over 10 years. Now, converging paths can undercut the premise here. Despite a strong dual setup, both routes merge into nearly identical story beats, so you don't have as much control of the outcome of the plot as you did in other previous games. You have this emotional difference which becomes cosmetic in a way. Obviously, one ending is going to give you more bang for your buck here versus the other, depending which one you go for. Major outcomes don't significantly diverge as well. You will still get to the same end space, and unlike, say, Season 1 of The Walking Dead, it's not as impactful here. So while the premise is about your past choice, the narrative doesn't meaningfully sustain that difference, outside of some pretty interesting Easter eggs and throwbacks. Now, the rule of powers are also vague. The shift from time rewind to memory manipulation, it's interesting, but there are no clear limitations. Consequences feel inconsistent, and key plot turns rely on because the power works this way now. Don't think about it. You're here to watch the story play out. That is why you're here. It weakens the mystery because there's no solid framework to understand what's at stake. And in Life is Strange Season 1, you had a lot of the season to really kind of learn and see the strengths and weaknesses of your powers. Here, it's just off to the races, and you don't get a whole lot of time to marinate with it all. The reveal centers on here a figure tied to memory research, someone attempting to correct traumatic outcomes, but the motivations for this main antagonist, if you will, it's rushed late game. They lack the presence of earlier villains. Even Double Exposure had a better villain setup, and their plan mirrors Max's actions rather than challenging them. It's a little strange how they handled the antagonist here, and I would say it's arguably the weakest one in the franchise. And to be fair, Life is Strange isn't really known for fantastic villains. I mean, the Season 1 villain was pretty awesome, but outside of that, that's not really what you're here for. So we need to talk about the ending, because gameplay-wise, I'm not going to go too deep on what's happening here. You have the various setups. You know how a Life is Strange game plays. Not much changes, but like the original game, everything builds towards a binary decision. Now, you got two options at the end. You can choose to, say, A, allow Max to stop using her powers entirely. The fractured memories begin to stabilize, and reality settles into one consistent timeline. Now, this will be different based on which ending you chose in Life is Strange 1. If you saved Chloe, Max and Chloe move forward, but they have to live with Arcadia Bay's destruction, accepting that guilt. If you chose Arcadia Bay, Chloe remains dead, but Max finally has closure and acceptance over the friend she lost. This is considered the accept reality ending to the franchise. Then you have option 2, rewriting memory. You have the ability where Max fully embraces her powers one last time. She reshapes key memories across multiple people, including herself, essentially creating a new version of events that happened. The outcome here, Chloe can now exist in some form regardless of whichever ending you have. The world becomes stable, but now it's artificial. And there's subtle hints now that show things aren't real. This is the controlled reality ending, and arguably I'd say it's just as interesting as the other choice, because while one fights for you to get closure or accept the guilt of the cost you paid or the price you paid to save your friend, in this ending, it leaves a lot of ambiguity. It leaves a lot of ambiguity on the mental state of Max and whether her powers truly did go one step too far this time. Now, the core setup here, set years after the original Life is Strange, Reunion adapts to your ending. A new supernatural phenomenon begins distorting memories and timelines, forcing Max to confront the consequences of her past, whether Chloe is truly gone, and whether messing with the time again is justified. My final verdict with Reunion, if I had to grade this title, I would probably give it a 3 out of 5, maybe a 3.5. Max and Chloe, they remain one of gaming's best duos. Emotional moments that do hit incredibly hard, and I'll be honest, I reflected on myself in more ways than one. That interesting ideas that they could have done more with, but unfortunately, the game does keep its surface level outside of the grand conclusion with Max and Chloe. Then you gotta call it what it is. This game has the best performances in the entire series, but the choices lack more impact than ever outside of the ending. Gameplay is nearly non-existent. Story structure, it repeats old ideas, and these same themes and set pieces just kind of come back again and again and again, and it's lost a bit of its luster. Fan service ultimately is replacing innovation. So, I like Reunion, and I'm going to be honest, and I have to touch base with all this again. I absolutely love Life is Strange. I enjoy it as a franchise. I think every game is worth playing in some capacity. Life is Strange 1 was the cream of the crop. Life is Strange 2, the relationship of the brothers as they make their way to Mexico was amazing, and the tie-in with Captain Spirit is still well realized. Life is Strange True Colors will always be my personal favorite, and I love the setup for the character in that game. Even with the DLC of just running a radio show, even Double Exposure. I have a fondness for Double Exposure. I think it has some interesting ideas that are worth seeing through, even if it's just because Max is in it. Don't even forget about Before the Storm, which, I mean, it's cool to see more of the context with Rachel Amber, but I digress. Now, Life is Strange Reunion. It proves something important. The series, it never lost its character. It lost what made interacting with each of these characters for long stretches of the adventure meaningful. I think all these games that are following Life is Strange lack that. I mean, even look at my personal favorite, True Colors. A lot of the context you have with people in the town are generic emails and text messages. Nothing more than that. Max and Chloe are still powerful, still compelling, still worth caring about. But the game around them, it feels like it's finally run out of new things to say, and worse, new ways to let you be a part of it. The franchise, it tried to evolve. It tried to adapt, but it never quite recaptured the spark. And maybe that's okay, you know, not every lightning in a bottle can strike twice, or whatever that saying is. Let's be fair. The games still have dedicated fans, and rightfully so. I still enjoyed my time with each title in this franchise, True Colors standing out as my personal favorite. They still review solid in the mid-70s to low 80s on Metacritic. They can still tell emotionally resonant tales. This isn't a collapse, like a broken live service game. It's more subtle. Life is Strange didn't explode. And for what it's worth, just like life, there are plenty of highs and plenty of lows. But the journey itself is one you'll always be thankful you experienced.
CJ is stupid and he's also dumb. Even though the show's over, he's still humming to the beat. Every single day he's gonna tell you what it means to be gaming with a purpose. Right here on Cookies